Today on Sports Central, we'll be going over a college football game preview and prediction on one of the big SEC matchups coming up in Week 9, and that's going to be between Georgia and Kentucky. And Georgia's coming off of a bye week and a tough Alabama loss the week before that, and they're hoping to turn things around against a Kentucky team which has had their own struggles recently. So this should be a very important matchup for both of these teams moving into week number 9. And we'll be going over a full college football game preview on this one, starting out with your team trends. And last week, Georgia lost to Alabama. Well, actually, that was a couple of weeks ago. They did have a bye week last week, but they lost to Alabama 24-41. And then Kentucky lost to Missouri 10-20 last week. So that was a really bad loss for Kentucky. Obviously, Missouri is not all that great of a team. So for Kentucky to lose to a team like that, that's certainly not a good sign for them right now. And this would be a big game for Kentucky. If they could get a win here, that would be a huge momentum shifter for this Kentucky team that definitely is having their own struggles right now. But as far as winning streaks for both these teams, Georgia's ranked 5th in the nation right now, 3-1, and they've got a 1-game losing streak. Meanwhile, for Kentucky, they're 2-3, also with a 1-game losing streak. The game's going to be on Saturday, October 31st, noon Eastern. Lexington, Kentucky is where it's going to be held, so Kentucky will be your home team for this matchup. The spread currently says Georgia by 14.5. ESPN FPI also has Georgia 86%, and the Vegas prediction also has Georgia 38-22, being the predicted final score right now. So Georgia is favored in all three of our sources here, which really is not all that big of a surprise, considering Kentucky once again has had quite a few struggles recently, and after coming off of a bad loss to Missouri, it's not all that surprising. But Kentucky being the home team, that should at least give them some sort of an advantage. Obviously, I mean, the fans aren't really loud at full capacity, but for Kentucky being at home, that should help them a little bit in the end in some way. Here's a stat comparison for this one as well. Georgia's got 33 points per game, 19 points allowed, 253 pass yards a game, 165 rush yards. And then for yards allowed, they've allowed 253 pass yards on average, and then 65 rush yards on average. So this rushing defense for Georgia has been excellent so far this season. I mean, let me remind you, they played Alabama and Najee Harris just a couple of weeks ago, and they still have a 65-yard average on allowing rushing yards. So all around, that's a really good stat line for Georgia right now, and that's going to be very important going into this matchup, which for Kentucky, things just do not line up for them. I mean, this is just a bad matchup considering Kentucky has had a lot of big struggles in the passing game. I mean, they've only had 123 pass yards per game so far, and they've really relied on the rushing game, which they've got 184 average rushing yards per game. And if you look at that, Kentucky's more of a rushing team, and they're going to have to pass the ball against Georgia if they're even going to have a chance of winning this matchup. I mean, Georgia's easily got the best rush defense, I would say, in the country right now. And for Georgia, or for Kentucky, once again, being more of a rushing team, that's not going to match up very well for them at all. And I think that's going to be very detrimental to Kentucky's chances of pulling an upset here in Week 9. As for Kentucky, though, they got 24 points per game, 20 points allowed per game. Once again, they got 123 pass yards a game, 184 rush yards. And then for yards allowed, they've allowed 228 pass yards and then 129 rush yards per game on average. So all around, once again, Kentucky's going to have to pass the ball in this one if they're even going to think about getting a win here. Here's our key points. Georgia's coming off of a bye and a tough loss to Alabama, obviously. And this would be a huge game for Georgia to be able to flip that around. Obviously, the Alabama team is looking like easily the best in the nation right now, along with Clemson. So, I mean, it's not all that terrible of a loss considering Alabama, once again, is as good of a team as they are. But it just kind of shows where Georgia's at right now. Alabama is clearly the better team if you compare both teams together. But, I mean, this could be a big game for Georgia, especially if they want to have a bit of a momentum shift heading into the second half of the season. But Kentucky has a few consistency issues for sure. Offensive struggles have been a big deal for them so far this season as well. And that's going to be something that they got to figure out if they're going to get any big wins this season for that matter. I mean, the quarterback situation has been much worse than expected. Obviously, they've seen a lot of injuries in the quarterback position over the past couple of seasons. And this season has just been kind of a weird one for them. But, yeah, they definitely have to get that figured out if they're going to be a decent team in the SEC this season. And this is also a very important game for both of these teams. And once again, you got Georgia on one side trying to be a national contender. If you lose in this game, you're probably knocked out of the college football playoff as you'd have 2 losses at that point. And then for Kentucky on the other side, I mean, if you want to have a 3-3 record and if you don't want to start 2-4, this is going to be a very important matchup for you to get a win as well, especially if you're wanting to have a decent postseason spot. So, yeah, it's a very important game for both of these teams, and that's the main reason why we're previewing this one here today, is because of how impactful it is. But nonetheless, just my prediction on this one. I think Georgia ends up getting the win very easily here. I think your halftime score is going to be 21-10 with Georgia getting the win. Or that's going to be your lead at half. But your final score is going to be 42-17. Georgia will pull away in the second half and get a huge win over Kentucky. I just think, once again, this is just a bad matchup for Kentucky right now. I mean, you got a Kentucky Wildcat team that's a very rush pro team. I mean, they've definitely rushed the ball a lot more than passed it so far this season. And considering Georgia's probably got the best rushing defense in the country right now, that is just not going to match up well. Georgia's going to get the win in the end, 42-17. That will be your final score. But do let me know your thoughts and comments below on this matchup. Want to know your score predictions, all that, etc. in the comments below. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But then again, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. If you enjoyed this preview, slap a like on it and subscribe as well. And I will see you all later.